This poor plate got slung off the wheel and got its rim crushed. Here, we're going to try to repair it. So the rim has been fairly well stuck to the bat, and I'm going to use the wire to separate the whole thing so that we can lift it up a little bit. The idea is that if we can lift it up a little bit and smear it into something almost round, maybe we can continue the spinning move and rethrow the rim. So I've had some good luck with this. The pot wasn't too wet. You want to go fairly slow and keep the surface pretty wet. The idea here is going to be to do something you would be familiar with, like compressing the neck in of a vase to collar it in. And also, we do this gesture when we compress the rim a bit with the sponge. So it's a little bit like collaring and a little bit like compressing. I was pretty gentle here and just went very slow. The bump that's going around is becoming less and less because I'm not overreacting. I'm not grabbing it too hard. I'm not making any sudden movements. And what you'll see is that I'm essentially unthrowing the wall. I thought that what I would do is compress the rim deeper, further and further and further until I got back down to this low ring. Quite literally like rewinding the piece. And this compressing is probably going to work out as much of that lump as possible. If you don't rewind, as it were, the piece that far, you may have some warping later. And so, in other videos, I'll show you how I make plates by making this big disc and then taking the edge of the disc and building it up into a ring. This is sort of back where that step is. Now that the damaged rim is really low and doesn't extend out into space, I'm going through the normal plate making procedure again to see how lucky I am. This isn't too much more wobbly than it was in the beginning when I made the thing. So here I'm compressing the bottom, and the way I build up the ring from the side is to put the sponge at the wheel head. This last bit of compressing is me trying to get a little more control over the edge. If you have a wobbly edge, you could probably cut it off with a needle tool and then continue with this next step. So the rib here is what you would be doing under all circumstances, not just on a repair. You're going to compress the bottom, move it out from the center, and just get a generally attractive shape that you like. The sponge here is right at the wheel head and goes directly in towards the center and undercuts the clay there. The inside hand there is keeping the clay from bunching up in an unpredictable way. You do want it to bunch up, but you want to do it very gradually. So however much clay you pull up here, now that you can be on the inside and outside of it, this is a normal throwing move. And this is how I make the rims of plates. You want to anticipate the amount of spread that the wheel helps you with. So this initial shape should be taller than you want it to be, and maybe more straight-sided than you want it to be. And here is more just simple throwing techniques, not because it was a repair. You're going to have fingers on the inside and fingers on the outside, and I tend to leave the rim a little bit thicker. Here you can see a little bit of the wobble, and I tend to ask myself, well, how much am I going to worry about the wobble? And here is a way of calming yourself down. Take the thickness of the clay wall as a unit of measure. If your wobble is up and down the thickness of the clay wall, or in and out the thickness of the clay wall, you're fine. No one's going to see that amount of wobble when the pot is stationary. Later, if you have a real priority with wobbling, you can look back to where you're centering and how you're pulling out, and you can go after it that way. So this neurotic move is with a wooden corner to make the bottom connection place very, very tidy. I like this later when I go and trim because it makes the even circle and makes trimming a little bit easier. So I've raised the walls as much as I want. They're wrong by being too tall and too straight. I want a wider bowl, and so here is all the shaping that goes from the inside. Here's that nice flexible rib type, and continue out from the floor and very gradually push into the wall from the center outward, and you get a little bit of a curve. These plates that I like making are kind of enclosed. Probably they wouldn't be called plates that you would eat off of. These are probably more like serving platters, these. But as the thing gets wider, you want to slow the wheel down a little bit. And just lightly change the shape in a way that you like. So now with wide forms, you want to make sure you like the rim, and that's the sponge technique. And now that there's the wire, a tip is to pull the wire under the far side of the piece and let that go around a couple times before going all the way through, or you might have problems. Well, that's the repair of a piece that got collapsed, and it's not too much worse than it was originally.